G'day folks, ZiggyD here. If you're up for some high effort but high reward gameplay in Blight, then take a look at some Icicle Mines action. The new Mines rework has been rather divisive, let's say, and in all honesty, the Mines playstyle is now more high effort and complex than ever. So if ZiggyD's objective was to make Mines a more widely played archetype, well, I don't think that'll be happening. That said, if you're a glutton for punishment, the reward is there in the form of insanely good clear and excellent single target. I made this build with the single-minded goal of farming the new blighted maps, and it performs excellently in that regard, clearing enemies in a multiple screen radius with hundreds of chaining projectiles from each mine detonation sequence. With this goal in mind, I disregarded the significant defenses of Saboteur to play Deadeye for the speedy zoom and bonuses to chaining and chain damage scaling. I used the chain support, Deadeye's bonus chain, Snake Pit, and Gloomfang to achieve a metric shitload of chaining and damage. Deadeye gives 10% more damage per remaining chain, and Gloomfang gives up to 20% added chaos damage per chain that's happened, so we get a ton of damage at both ends of the chaining spectrum. The result is that I can sit somewhere fairly safe, throw my mines where they'll have good line of sight to everything in the Blight map, and watch the red dots die on the minimap. Now I know some of you like to calculate DPS and wave it around like a compensatory electronic penis, so let's do some very legit math. Path of Building says my average Icicle hits for around 59,759 damage, not including crit auras on mines and things like that. Now, in a sequence, I detonate around, say, 30 mines to be conservative. Sometimes it's upwards of 40. I fire 9 projectiles on the first mine, and an additional projectile for each 2 mines in the sequence, which is around 480 projectiles in total. Those 480 projectiles chain 5 times each, so that's 2,880 hits multiplied by the 59,759 average damage for 172,105,920 damage per detonation sequence. Though, that's not including the Gloomfang damage bonus, which is 100% added chaos on the final chain. It's too hard to do that math, so my best guess is somewhere around 500 million damage. Now, Shaper has only 18 million hit points, so that's around 27 Shapers per detonation sequence. With a 6-second detonation sequence, that's around 4.5 Shapers per second. All we need is around 500 Shapers on the screen at once. Easy peasy. Now that sounds pretty good, but I did discover that some of the bosses in blighted maps actually have multiple Shapers worth of HP, and there isn't always 500 enemies around. So I also worked in some Ice Spear mines into the build for additional single target when we need it. It's like a spell version of Barrage, and the chain damage scaling and additional projectile from Deadeye adds a bunch of damage to it, so it's proven to be very effective on bosses, allowing me to insta-phase Shaper if I time the detonation sequence correctly. Snake Pit Ring and Gloomfang are the only specific items I use in the build, and they both don't see much use overall, so they should be pretty cheap. The rest of my gear is basic rares with life and resist. I'm using a staff because I got a pretty good one with double damage and +3 all cold spells and regal crit multi on it. You can also use a pair of +1 cold spell ones with spell damage and crit multi instead if you prefer. Getting some mana on gear is pretty helpful in the build to make sure that you have enough unreserved mana to lay all of your mines. Now, I don't really recommend Tremor Rod. I did try it, but unfortunately, it seems to break the detonation sequences all the time. There's a few weird things going on with Tremor Rod now. You won't often need an Ice Spear setup for single target. The Icicle Mines single target is actually pretty damn good by itself, but if you decide you need it for high-level Blight map bosses, then you can either use a staff and a chest for your 2 6-links, or you can get a Shaper helmet with Blast Chain Mine support and Mine damage supports built in for a pseudo 6-link. The playstyle is overall pretty janky. It's a combination of spammy and finesse. While clearing, I just spam throw and detonate Icicle Minefields, throw 5, detonate, move, repeat. It's simple and spammy, but effective. Like a much stronger but much more awkward tornado shot. When it comes to sustain mining, however, that's where I see most people screwing up. You want to place a bunch of minefields, preferably up to your limit, and then detonate once. Keep throwing the whole time to extend the sequence as far as possible so that you get that insane ramping damage chain. Then when the sequence naturally ends, wait a moment while you keep throwing until you have at least 10 to 15 mines out, and then start the sequence again, all the while throwing. This will maximize out your damage. Get this down pat and you'll have way more damage than if you simply spam detonate, which results in short crappy sequences that will break all the time. Honestly, even doing it perfectly like this doesn't always work. Detonation sequences break early sometimes. I think like throwing new mines sometimes breaks the sequence itself, even though that's kind of what you need to do to extend the sequence. The system is overall a bit janky, so if that happens and a sequence detonates and breaks early, then you'll just need to redetonate. You kind of have to babysit your mines a little bit. The reservation aspect of mines is a little odd overall, but I kind of like it. And if you're using other auras, which makes sense with the aura reservation and scaling synergy that you're probably investing into, the main way of dealing with that whole reservation mana thing is to simply use a mana flask, I know, with the new prefix Enduring, which keeps the mana flask active even if your mana tops off. And I know some of you guys don't like the idea of a mana flask, but the mana flasks are doing something pretty interesting at the moment. They seem to chain end to end if you use them multiple times rapidly. So it's really easy to use a mana flask like this. You just spam it and it stays up 100% of the time. I use the Smoke Mine skill as a get around move skill. It's really powerful, it's got blinding and a move speed boost on it, and you can throw it pretty far. You just have to get in the habit of throwing and then detonating. However, it does screw up pretty often when you accidentally throw 2 instead of 1. I'd really love for ZiggyD to add a short cooldown to it so I don't accidentally throw 2 all the time and randomly flicker myself backwards. If you hate Smoke Mine so much that you don't want to use it, you can just use Flame Dash instead. It's not as good, but it doesn't at least screw up too much. Now, when the mines work properly, they are really very strong and rewarding, and I have to commend ZiggyD for making a really nuanced and interesting set of mechanics here. Most people, however, are going to hate it, and it's unfortunately quite buggy at times on top of that. With a few fixes it'll be better, but it's never going to be a popular playstyle. That said, if you want to give it a try for yourself, my build export will be in the description below, and you can model your character using mine as a guideline if you like. That's it for now, I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.